Consciously podcast with me, your host, Simon Fooks. Today is episode 9, and we've got Christel Crawford joining us talking about Christel. Oh, okay, cool. I was like, Christel or Christel?
We're like good friends, but we don't know a lot about each other. So
yeah. I watch too much Selling Sunset, so I'm just like everything's Chriselle and Christel, and yeah. So yeah, you're just joining me. We're going to have a chat about 6 things that I wish I knew in business beforehand. And if you guys got any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll try and keep up with the different devices that we have.
Yes.
Yeah. But welcome and thank you for coming on.
Absolutely, yeah. And all of you guys joining us on Facebook, this is, for those of you guys in my world that don't know Simon, this is Simon Fooks, because we're going live on my pages too. And we just thought we'd have a chat about business. Actually, we're both hosts of Simone's Business and Different coming up, and also entrepreneurs and creators. And so I'm going to do 3 things, and you're going to do 3 things. Where do we want to start?
Well, how about you start? What's one thing that you wish you knew in business beforehand?
Well, one of the things that I wish I knew at the beginning was that you can always make another choice. Because I had to really spend a lot of energy going around myself and my own need for perfection. So you don't have to. Perfect is invented. There's no such thing. And so you can always literally just make another choice. There's no reason. You don't have to hold things in place. You don't have to do any structure. It's like you can change things all the time. And I think so much in business, we're taught that we can't get it wrong. We have to get it right in order to achieve particular results. And so I wish I knew at the very beginning that I always have another choice and I can't really pick this up.
Yeah, I love that one too, because it's like, and that kind of actually leads me into my one too, which is actually the willingness to fail. There's been quite a few times where I've like made choices that other people in my line of work have never done, and I've just gone, you know what, I'm actually going to like drive across Australia, which Australia is quite a big country, but like I was looking down the barrel at losing, like $10,000-$15,000 for what I was about to choose. And I was like, I have no idea if this is going to work. I've been lucky in the way that a lot of the times it's worked. There are I was actually looking as I was moving my stock yesterday with one of my businesses, and I was like, oh, that was an idea that failed. That was an idea that failed. So I've got like boxes of things that just never actually panned out too. But that's also saying that's the assumption that Vicky's saying that she's having trouble hearing.
I just saw that. Yeah, I was muted. So if you guys couldn't hear me before, it's because you couldn't hear me, because I literally had no sound. So hopefully I'm unmuted now. Winning.
Yeah. But yeah, it's also like with that assumption too of like, with that idea failed, it's like actually using that question of like, how much am I in the future with this? Because that actually is like what I've noticed with, and you were actually on a class that we did with Chris Hughes recently, where it was the second part of the sales call.
Yeah.
And I started to actually acknowledge how much in the future I was with my business. And I hadn't actually been asking that question because I'd been working on my website and e-com side of things. And that's always been kind of a slow burner for me. And then when I actually acknowledged, oh my God, I'm like 2 years in the future with this, and I've been pumping energy into it and expecting it to do something. And I'm like, okay, when's this actually going to do it? Maybe in about 2 years, I guess. And I was like, oh, okay. So I could actually relax then and stop making myself wrong for something. So yeah.
I think that's like 2 really amazing tools right there that you talked about, because I never had conversations about where I am and how in the future I am. And I'm almost always 2 years in the future too, like almost consistently. When I come up with an idea, 2 years later, it starts to do a thing. And so I've learned from that, because, you try to institute something that's for the future or your awareness of the future, and it won't do the thing. And then you can judge yourself and get frustrated and give up based on that. And then someone mentioned it, like, well, are you in the future? And I was like, oh my God. And almost everything was, unless it like totally worked. And then I was like, so I got that my awareness doesn't have time as a thing. Like there's no, when I'm aware of something, it doesn't come with like, well, this is for this time, you know. So I had to start asking different questions about like, okay, is this for now or in the future? Even was a huge one. And if something wasn't moving, to ask, was I in the future with this? Because that just, I mean, it's so I think business is this constant facilitator of like learning how you work.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I actually love that too. I mean, you know, with Gary Douglas, he was, I don't know how many years in the future. And it's actually interesting. I love the fact that we get recordings of all the classes that we do too, because the stuff that they talk about, like I remember Gary talking about avoiding and defending actually 2019 in the last ABC class before COVID lockdowns happened.
Yeah.
And he was talking about avoiding and defending, and now it's like 2 years later, it's actually like changed into what it is, which has been friggin' amazing. But like with that guy, he has a constant awareness of future, where you can go back and listen to classes from months or years ago, and it's still unraveling almost. So it's pretty yeah. So that's one of our tools that we recommend, is like ask that question of how much in the future am I with this?
Yeah, instead of judging yourself, I think that's another just thing I wish I knew, is that judging myself slows everything down.
Do you
I
want
know
to say
you never
more
judge
about
yourself,
that?
do you? I know, I don't ever judge
No,
myself.
never. Literally, when you asked me about the business thing, about doing this call, I was like, man, I'm shit at business. Even though I've created a pretty amazing business, and I'm like still like every day I'm like, oh my God, the amount of places I still judge myself with that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, having to pull myself up.
But
do you want to talk more about?
I mean, you just said that, you know, like, I'm so glad you said that, because the thing is that every humanoid I've ever met, and if you guys are listening to this, you're very likely humanoid. If you need a billion things going on at the same time and you constantly judge yourself, you're humanoid. And the thing about us is like, we constantly think we're bad, even when we're being brilliant, almost especially when we're being brilliant. But it's like our brilliance doesn't show up in the way that we've decided it should, or, you know, and a part of the process, at least that I've discovered, are these times where you don't feel like you're doing much, or things aren't moving like they should, or you're learning stuff, or the learning curve, you know. But if you really look back, the trend is upward, you know. And so, but down here, we're like, I'm terrible. And so, I mean, I wish I knew that was a part of the process, because I kind of didn't. I think I thought, like, once I got a hold of these access tools and I'm a certified facilitator and I should know what I'm doing, that would mean something. And that's not true. You're just figuring things. You're having the adventure, and part of the adventure is those times where you're just not as confident and you're kind of learning stuff, and you know, life is iterating. And I wish I knew that.
Yeah. There's also, it reminds me too of actually what I noticed last week, because I think it was last week or the week before, I really started judging myself with certain aspects of my business, where I was like, I've been asking to change and to grow and to make a lot more money in the business. And then I started judging myself and going, well, this is not happening. This is not happening. This is not happening. But then I actually looked at it and went, is that actually true? Or is it actually the space before something is about to show up? Yeah.
But you guys, right there, if you pause on that, like, that is so important to ask yourself this. And I think a lot of what's coming up is like timing things, because we like, are you impatient like me, where it's like you change something and you want it yesterday? So
yeah. I've been asking
for
something for 3 seconds, and I'm like, universe, where is this? What's going
on?
Yeah.
This class is broken. This is broken.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But timing things, I think, are huge, because we're incredibly fast. So like, I didn't know how fast I was till I got doing business. So we're incredibly fast. Our awareness is incredibly fast. We have an awareness. So do you discover this? Like, when you make a choice, you have an awareness of like, okay, it's completed. And yet there's still all these like steps to take to institute it, you know, but we can already see like, it's already here. And like, why isn't it here? And so these timing things are huge. Like, I love that you said that.
Yeah. I mean, I like that you said that too, because it's like, I will do something in my head. I will go, okay, I've got to do all these things. I will do it in my head. And then like 5 seconds later, I'm like, okay, I'm bored with it. Or why isn't it done yet? Like,
why don't I have the $1 million?
Yeah. I'm like, I did everything, and I'm like, why haven't the people shown up? Oh, because I actually forgot to do all the physical things that I'm like trying to do in order to create it. So yeah.
But on my planet, you can just imagine like have the energy of them, and they show up out of the ground. Like, what is this planet that you have to do things? This is weird.
Yeah. It's funny too, the brain actually doesn't know the difference between when we're doing something physically and when we've actually imagined it too. So maybe that's part of
it. That is so true. Yeah. Man, yeah. So the timing things are big, you guys. Like if you have a business, like starting to get how you perceive or work. Time is a construct. So oh my gosh. What was the one you brought up? It was so good. Not the future one, the one after that, like the space. Is this?
The space. Yeah. We are a bit fast. We're kind of ADHD. Well, it's like often the space before the things that you've been asking for show up. It just becomes this space of like, and it actually doesn't have a feeling to it. It just kind of feels like space, but it can feel like wrongness, and it can
or nothing.
It's just like yeah. And then you start going, oh, what the fuck's going on here? Like nothing's showing up, nothing's working. And then, but it's actually, that's the thing, is you've got to ask that question: is this the actual space before something is about to show up? And that's why when I actually acknowledged that, something started. Well, I noticed. When I acknowledged it, then I was actually able to receive. I was like, oh, actually, something's changing here. And that's the thing, is like, sorry, I'm kind of
that's fine. I'm just interrupting. Don't worry. Keep going. It's awesome.
But it's looking at it and going, okay, is this about to show up here? Because the more you can actually acknowledge, the thing is, if you don't acknowledge that you've created that, or you are creating it, or it is showing up, then it's like actually saying to the universe, hey, I want this thing to show up. And then just before it shows up, you go, like, no, thank you. And the universe is like, but it's about to show up. So that's the thing, is like, when I started acknowledging that, I started receiving from it, and I was like, oh, this is a space of what I've been asking for. And it might not happen in the amount of time that I've decided, like you mentioned the whole thing with time, but it's like, oh, is this a space of this thing showing up now? And I was like, yep. And then I was actually able to relax and receive it more. So
that's amazing. Yeah, because business is not linear. It's not linear. I don't care how many conversations you guys have been in where they've told you it's linear. It's not. It's like you choose, and from our choice it creates, and then there's the institution and the actualization and all the different things that go into action and iteration for something to show up, including all of the universe and all of the molecules, and so it's like having awareness of what's occurring is such a skill. I think it's so essential to having ease.
Yeah. I'm actually getting it more and more after now that we're having this conversation, where I'm like, oh my God, business isn't linear, but we try and linearize it in order to make sense, and for it to see where we're actually,
or make sense of it, or have something that's like sensical, but that's not, like, nothing in creation is that sensical. I don't know if you can see this vine next to me. If you guys are listening, you can't see this, but this window that I'm staying in this hotel is covered in this vine. And I looked at it the other day and I'm like, nobody gave this vine the memo that this is a window. The vine was just like, growl, and I'm like, that's business. That's like, and then sometimes there's parts of this vine that aren't growing, and so that part's dead and that needs to be cut down, but other parts of it that are just thriving. And I'm like, there you go. That's business. That's living. That's how it goes. Where it can grow, it does, and where it can't, it dies off, and it just keeps going in whatever direction it's going to go. And if we don't try to control it or tame it or whatever, it will have this. Well, the whole building will be covered, and so will the neighborhood.
And that's probably, I like that you're saying that too, because it is, that's probably one of the keys too, is, as you mentioned, if we don't try and control it, it just explodes. But like us as humanoids, I'm like, I was actually getting a few weeks ago how much I was actually trying to control my business, because I've been very lucky in the way that one of my businesses has been this beast that just kept growing in energy. And I was like, this thing, like, if I don't even have to do a hell of a lot to it. I don't have to do a lot with it, but it just, like, it wants to keep growing. And it's a lot of the time what I'm realizing now is it's me getting out of the way of that and all my points of views about what I decided it needs, what I decided who it needs, and all these different things. And recently I was like, oh, I need a manager. I need to get myself out of the way completely in order for this to work. And then I was like, actually, is that true, or is there something else required? So I just kept kind of asking different questions.
Can I ask you something about that? Because what I think is something I've learned that I didn't really know how to do in the beginning was like ask more questions. You know, I'm an incredible conclusionist. I don't know about you. I can go to a conclusion faster than I just snap my fingers. And what I started to discover about conclusions is like we were talking is that they were control, or they were the top of what I had decided was possible, and I know best. And so they were functioning from all these places that didn't allow anybody or anything else to contribute to me. And so what I started to learn is that they didn't speed things up. They didn't make things more fun. They actually made things harder. So I reversed it and started to ask more questions. What prompted you to, what I found about questions is they are also an exploration of like, well, I mean, all of business is an exploration. It's like, well, let's do this. And then you're like, something hitches in your gitch and you're like, maybe I'll try something else. So what prompted you to start asking more questions about this? What was it about putting a manager in place that didn't do the thing where you were like, maybe I'll ask more about this?
Well, the thing is so I spoke to Gary, I think it was last year, and I was like, dude, I've got to, like, I'm trying to work on this business. And then I was like, oh, I need to do this with my business in order for it to grow. And he's like, well, you've got no conclusion there. And I was like, mother. So like,
I need to do this in order for this to grow. I am God and I know everything.
Yeah, and I was trying to actually, and this kind of actually leads me into one of the next tools too, was I was trying to do it the way everyone else would do it. I was trying to be linear with it, and I was trying to actually not be too different with it. And when I actually started looking at it, and he basically said to me, he's like, you've got so many conclusions about it. And I was like, okay. And then even recently when I was like, okay, it's time to get a manager in, but like for 3 weeks, all I had to do was sit down and write an ad, and it just didn't happen. I was like, whatever I did to myself.
Yeah, that's the key though. When something's not moving, this is, you guys, one of the things I didn't know, when something's not moving, you're aware of something. It's like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Which is why I started going, okay, this isn't happening. If I wasn't wrong, like you said, one of the tools is don't friggin' judge yourself. Keep asking questions. So I was like, okay, if I'm not wrong about this, then what is this that I'm actually aware of? And when I went, okay, maybe I don't need to remove myself from the business, I was like, I could relax. I could breathe a bit. And then I was like, okay, what else do I need to add here? Oh, and then I started looking at, maybe I just need to get a virtual assistant. And I was like, oh, okay, if I get a virtual assistant, can they do all the things that I need someone else to do that I just can't, because of my ADHD brain, I can't keep up with myself. So I'm like, okay, cool. If I get in a virtual assistant, can they do this, this, and this? And I was like, oh my God, that's the key that's been missing, rather than trying to like boot myself because I was judging myself for like, you're a control freak. It was just like, I kind of went, okay, cool. I'll put on a VA and then see what that creates. I haven't gotten around to it because that was the only awareness that I had last week. I was going to ask one of my new staff members to actually help me find a VA, and I was like, okay, maybe. Yeah, we'll see. But that's the job for this week. Yeah. But that's the thing is like, that's what you were asking, was that thing of I can talk a lot. But it was like I said, was I started looking at, okay, if this is not showing up, then what else am I aware of here? Or like, rather than coming that conclusion of like, oh, I need to do this, this, and this because this is what everyone else would do. Like, what am I aware of here? And
I think to me that's like the whole adventure of business, is like choosing some stuff and instilling chaos and getting some stuff moving, and then stuff's moving, and then you're like, no. and then you just learn. It's like you learn from the dance of it all. You learn from the information you're getting, or the information you don't seem to be getting, or the stuff you've chosen that's like telling you things, or the amount of work that started to pile up. So you just choose and create and invent and iterate like all the time. And everyone's telling you, it's like you make a plan and you stick to the plan. That's not how business actually creates. So I think I kind of wish I knew that too, although I don't know if I knew that would have helped anything. So I was pretty determined to judge myself. But, like knowing that it was supposed to be this organism, like business is actually this organism ocean thing rather than this like straight from point A to point B. It's like you dance with it, you talk to it, you listen to it, I don't even know what else, but
yeah. I think we've probably given them like 6,000 tools already. Because I'm like,
I can't do 6. Yeah. It's too little.
And we can't do linear too. Have you noticed? We're talking about we can't do business linear, but we can't actually have this conversation linear because I'm not sure where we've gone with it or how linear we've been with it. But yeah, that's actually, I'm like starting to get that now more and more, like that we try, like you said, like we try and come up with a business plan and then we try and implement A plus B plus C. But I'm like the least linear. I'm so ADHD. We'll be doing a job and then forget that job and then start doing the other job and then go look across and go, oh shit, I was doing that, and then try and do that job. So it's like, and that is like in a spate of 2 seconds. And I'm like, holy shit. So when I stop actually trying to do things on a linear level and I'm like, okay, what would be fun for me to do right now? Okay, I'm going to do this. All right. And what do I want to do? Like normally it'll be like 5 minutes and then I'm done. But yeah, it's, yeah.
So in working with so is that something you knew about yourself or is that something you've learned through like choosing?
Yeah. Something I've learned. It's like I was speaking with Sylwyn Jones a couple of years ago, and I was like, dude, I try and wash the dishes, and then I end up in the garage tidying up the garage, and I'm like, I haven't finished the dishes yet. And I was like, how do I actually focus on doing one job? And he's like, you don't. You actually do all the jobs. Yeah. And I was like,
when I go to do the kitchen, I know that I'm doing the house.
Yeah.
It's going to show up in the order that it shows up, and maybe just stay out of my way because then you won't be upset by the order of things.
Yeah. So I mean, that's part of the tool is being like acknowledging that we are different, and when we don't try and function like anyone else or like anything else, like that gives us a lot of freedom. Like my business definitely would have not have grown had I tried to do things the way everyone else was doing them, because no one else was doing what I was doing 10 years ago. And that actually created and generated a lot of money into my business and actually changed the whole trajectory of it, because I was like, you know what, why don't I just try this? I'll drive across the country and set up crystals and see if some people want to buy them. And then, it grew into something that was like pretty amazing. So
so we've got some really cool comments here too. Like Maria Anastasia saying, I jumped from one thing to another and I used to judge myself for not being able to focus on one thing and finish it. And me too. And Amy said, oh my gosh, I just called my doctor to get medication to fix my ADD so that I can be more functional.
It's not going to work.
Don't try to be more functional. Be more dysfunctional. It'll be easier.
I'm like, no, dude, turn that shit up. Yeah. But
that is actually true. It's like if you try to be, this is every time I try to, and I continue to do it in different ways. Every time I try to do more functional or do more linear or whatever, I will try it for a minute and even a month. And then I'm always like more tired after everything's moving slower, nothing is functioning like it could. And then as soon as I choose to be me again, which is completely illogical, completely out of order, completely just fun for the fun of it, everything goes, whee, so it's like, be dysfunctional. It's actually more fun and works better.
Yeah. I mean, and part of the gift of ADHD and ADD is like, we have the capacity to do 6 billion things at once. Like, and the more things, and I keep going to, okay, I've got enough jobs now, or I'm working on enough different businesses. I need to stop. And then someone goes, hey, do you want to work on this? And I'm like, yeah.
Yes.
But that's the, There's nowhere no in my universe. But the thing is like, the gift is that we actually have that capacity to be able to go, okay, this thing's talking to me right now. What else is talking to me right now? So therefore, we can do things that most people can't actually do. And when you start actually functioning from that space,
no, it's fine. I just got another. I'm like, Okay, so you surf, yeah?
Yes, yeah.
So, do you have an easier time with business when you do it more like surfing, or a harder, like, is business like surfing, more like surfing than something else?
Well, the thing is with I'm not sure. Like with my
Sorry, I just
surfing,
put you on the spot with that, but
yeah, I was like, I don't know what surfing is, but yeah, like with my surfing, I have like 16 surfboards. They're all they're all pretty new, and everyone's like looks at them and goes, "Why have you got so many surfboards?" But that's the way my brain functions. Is it likes new things, new feelings, new sensations. It likes every time I go out, I want it to be a different feeling, or like I just want to play around. So that's why
yeah.
the more I actually go, like, and I get a lot of judgments because I buy a lot of surfboards, and people are like, "You're nuts. Why do you keep doing that?" I'm like, because that's fun for me. That actually works for me. I actually enjoy it. So
It's
I
funny
don't
that
know
that's
how
okay
that's.
in a hobby, but that's not okay in business.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
what I think is really interesting about surfing, I don't surf. I've tried it once and I was terrible. But what I know about like skiing or something that's very similarly engaging is that when you're totally present and you're just with, the mountain or the skis or whatever's going on, like it's just total presence, and you actually have to widen your focus. You can't hard focus, because if you hard focus, you're going to fall. So you have to widen your focus in order to like take in all the information, because it's all coming really, really fast, and you're just choose, 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 choose. Same as horse riding or anything that requires that kind of presence. And to me, that's like that's the thing about having enough going on. Like when you're super ADD and super ADHD, you actually need that much going on so that you soft focus on it and you can actually function.
yeah. But it's also in that space. It's like, how present do we actually become? Like, it actually, yeah,
Yes, exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
That's the thing. I think that's probably one of the most addictive things for me for surfing is that it actually in that space, it's like everything goes quiet. I'm fully present, and I'm just enjoying the movement and at the moment. And it's like, yeah, that to me is why I actually love it, because I'm like, yeah. And it actually teaches me a lot too, because I
Yeah.
noticed yesterday when I went out and it was a small day, it was shit. I knew it was going to be shit, or not even, I had certain expectations where I was like, okay, I've got like 45 minutes to go surfing, then I've got to run off to work. So it better be good. I really haven't had good waves in a while, so I really want it to be good. And I had all these expectations. And what happens when you have expectations, especially in business, if you expect your business to do something, or if you expect someone in your business to do something, does that actually ever work for you? Like,
Separation, judgment, and rejection. That's the only thing it can create. Three things.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like what I've learned too is now, like with people in my business, because I used to expect, as soon as I pay someone, I'm like, expect you to do a job. Whereas Gary Douglas doesn't expect people to do anything.
No.
And when I started functioning from that point of view in my business of like, okay, well, I'll pay this person, they might not do anything. I'm often like pleasantly surprised now when someone shows up and they absolutely kill the job. And I'm like, holy shit, like that's amazing. So
Yeah.
it's taught me a lot about that too.
Yeah. Oh man. So that's 16.7 tools to we wish 32 that we wish we knew.
Yeah, totally.
I think I just wish I knew that it was okay to be me, and that it was going to be an adventure, and that it was a long-term adventure. Like that's the other thing about business that's really, maybe someday we'll wrap up. That that I'm getting all the time is like, if I'm just willing to like not give up, as long as I just keep going and I just keep playing and I keep choosing and I just don't give up, like there's so much success in there, and there's so much success along the way too. There's no there's these so much you get out of creating in the world, like changing people's lives and all the facilitation you get around money and choosing and being and knowing, and there's just like this constant gift that maybe doesn't necessarily always feel like a gift, but does gift you, like, here's what living is like, go play.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, if we don't make it serious, if we actually explore it from that space of like, okay, I wonder what's possible today, or whatever that is, it's just like, how much more ease do we have with it? Because if we expect to make a business work, or we have like all these like what do they call, where like someone targets and things like that,
Yeah.
it's like, how much pressure do we have to put on ourselves? And when we don't create those targets, it's like what happens kind of thing. But it's like when you actually create from that joy and go, okay, I'm going to see what happens now. I'm going to choose something different now. And that's the thing, is like, you got to be willing to choose something different that no one else is choosing. You've also got to acknowledge the difference that you are in business.
5032.
Yeah. But like you said, it's like you've actually got to acknowledge that you would function differently from everyone else. And it's actually the exploration of like, how do I function in business rather than, and there was a brilliant podcast that Simone Milicis and Shannon O'Hara did recently, where Shannon was like, I don't function linear. I work with magic. And she's like, when I acknowledge how different I am with my business, and that I function with magic, then I'm like, I'm good. But if I try and do linear and all these other things, it just doesn't work for her. Where Simone's like, yeah, I love the tax thing. I love the, and Shannon was like, I can't stand that stuff. But yeah, it was actually acknowledging the difference that you are, and is like, what if you actually started choosing from that space rather than trying to make yourself fucking fit or whatever
into anything else, into anything you've decided you should be, or what anybody else is doing. Like, it doesn't matter if they're even doing similar work. You are not the same. Things don't function the same for you. Yeah. That's truly a gift. And the other thing I think's never gonna end. The other thing I think's really cool about that is like, like, we are not the same. Like, the more of us that are willing to be as different as we are and really explore that, because it is an exploration. Like, I find out all the time how things function for me different. And I'm like, oh, that's how they've always worked. Cool. Then the more of us that do that, the more we have our differences. And one of the cool things I learned about like nature, I keep pointing to this vine, is that what makes a forest or an earth sustainable is a diversity. Actually, in landscaping, I was a landscape designer for 5 years. And what I didn't know is that in the landscaping business, at least in North America, all the plants that you buy in the landscaping places are clones. So they breed the tree to find something that works, that's pretty, that does the shape that they want, and then they just clone it. And they sell all the clones to the garden centers. Well, the thing about clones is that when everybody buys them, everybody puts them in their yards, one of those trees gets a pest and all of them are wiped out. So you had like this incredible, like these birch trees up in Canada, they have this white bark, and everybody had one because they were stunning. They're stunning. And one of them got a pest and all the birch trees were wiped out because there was no more diversity in the stock. And so we don't actually get the gift of diversity. We keep trying to clone ourselves and duplicate and be like the other people, when the sustainable, thriving choice is to be as different as we are. That is actually what creates this interconnected weaving of life that can support everything and everyone. It's cool.
Yeah.
So
that's so cool. I love that. That's really
yeah. Anyway, you guys, we could just talk for hours. Maybe we'll do this again. We wanted to invite you like wholeheartedly to Simone's Business Done Different class. She's got one coming up in October, and we're both hosts for it. And gosh, if you have been really looking for what this is for you, come find it. Come explore it.
Yeah, we'll try and figure out how to put a link in some comments.
You're not going to figure anything out. If you guys want to come, you message us. We'll get you the link.
There you go. But I mean, like that class to me, I love listening to Simone talk about business because it's super inspiring to me. And the last time I did one business Done Different class with her, it was like smoking. It was like being on crack with my business, where I was just like, I changed and created so much different stuff in my business. And I was like, holy shit. So I really kind of like stepped into a different space with it. And it's a brilliant class. And it is, you can learn, there's so many different tools in there. So even if you're not in business, even if you just like work for other people, like, yeah, pretty much.
If you're embodied.
Then come along. If it just pops, because it's like the stuff in there is gold, and Simone's a pretty amazing facilitator too.
I don't want to plug it too, because I was really surprised by Business Done Different. Actually, I've been a facilitator for a long time and not taken it, and I facilitated around business all the time, so I feel and felt very confident in my abilities and my knowledge, all this stuff. And then I was like, it's time to be a Joy Business facilitator, so I had to take those classes, and I went in kind of cocky and came out like humbled, and like not humbled, melted. So for me, it's like that the space and the gift of being given more of you just through a business class is kind of a miracle. So I'm really, really, really grateful for these classes, and really grateful for Simone, who's constantly showing like, never give up, never give in, never quit, keep going. You're a gift, you know, and all the tools that come with that are they're really game changing. So
yeah. Awesome. Thank you so
Great.
much.
This
has been the wildest tour of podcast. I'm like, this has been so non-linear. And beforehand, I was trying to make it linear, and I'm like messaging you going, what are we talking about?
You're like, give us what tool are we going to explore? And I'm like, why don't we just show up and I'll ask you things?
And I'm like, no, that's not the way things are done. I'm not a control freak. But
right, we'll
thank you.
It's fine. We'll do that, and then we'll totally fuck off the title.
Pretty much. It was like 30 seconds in, and it was like, so it was gone. Awesome.
Welcome to your world.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us too. And if you love this, share it around, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you.
Cheers.